Hey, I'm back. This is Mark Pattison with Finding Your Summit. And this week, I've got a great guy, Nick Hardwick, 11-year NFL pro for the San Diego Chargers. And Nick was a guy who I met down in Tanzania when we climbed Kilimanjaro on the Waterboys project. And I just found the guy so fascinating. He is now he will be the color guy for the San Diego Chargers, now the LA Chargers, moving up here north. And he also does a drive-in show in the morning. But anyways, just a fascinating guy. This is a guy who did not even play high school football and didn't play at Purdue for 2 years. He finally walked on. So to overcome that, figure it out, get drafted in the third round was just really amazing. And then all of that, he was a center and then drops all this weight, 295 and now down to like 225. So fascinating, smart guy, brilliant, and a lot of fun to do. So stay tuned. Here we go. I'm here in Hermosa Beach World HQ from my recording studio, and I've got a fantastic guest on today. His name is Nick Hardwick, a 11-year NFL pro. This guy is super fascinating on a lot of different levels, and Nick, a lot of these things that we're going to talk about, I actually didn't know. I met Nick in Tanzania. We just got done on a climbing project, which we'll talk more about. But Nick, welcome to the show.
Mark, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I got to say, I'm pretty jealous. I don't have a world headquarters myself.
You know, anybody who has a studio has got to have a world headquarters. So I decided I decided to put my stake in the ground right here, and it's a good spot. There's not a lot of mountains exactly on the beach, but it's a great place and a great platform to launch from.
There's plenty of training in Hermosa Beach, right?
There's tons of training. And, you know, our common buddy, Jim Moore, he and I train all the time down the beach and going up in the mountains and run stairs around here. So it's a lot of fun and a lot of people. It's such a, like, you know, you're down in San Diego. So it's a very engaged outdoor enthusiast community to be out, and it kind of feeds on top of each other.
Exactly right.
So listen, to the listeners, this story blows me away. And I got to be honest, when I met you, I just knew you as, you know, Nick Hardwick, the former NFL player of the San Diego Chargers. And that's how I identified you with. And until I did further research, this blew me away. And, you know, again, the name of this podcast is called Finding Your Summit. So a lot of this is not about the shiny outside package that I think a lot of times a lot of people see, especially with NFL football players or professional athletes, but it's really about coming upon challenges that you have overcome or things that you want to take on. And what I want to talk to you about is, here you are, a guy that grows up in Indianapolis, and here you are, fast forward the clock, and then I want to go back. You end up being a third-round draft choice, but you didn't play high school football. I mean, how does that work in the first 2 years? And then you know, you just sat on the sidelines and you were just a guy going to school at Purdue, and you said, hey, I'm going to go out and try on the football team. And the next thing you know, you're being drafted and you've got this great career, and that's turned into all these other things. How did that happen?
So I was a really small kid growing up. I was a late bloomer. I was a late kid to puberty. I didn't hit puberty really until going into my junior year of high school. So my freshman year, I was 5'4" tall, 125 pounds. I was a football player all the way from third grade up until eighth grade. And I was okay. I was tough. I liked to get dirty. I liked to mix it up, but I was really underdeveloped. And as kids started to hit puberty, I started to get passed up. And actually there was two schools that we had, two feeder schools that fed into my high school program. And I went to one of the middle schools. It was a really garbage football program. And we got an invite to training camp 2 weeks later than everybody else. So they had already started training camp by the time I showed up. Fast forward a little bit, no playing time my freshman year. I didn't play. I don't remember one down my freshman year, which probably saved me a little bit because I was so small, 5'4", 125.
That is amazing, considering what you're at your peak in the NFL, which you became, which is 95 pounds?
295. My biggest I ever got was 308. One off season after I had a Liz Frank surgery. I was non-weight bearing for 12 weeks. I got all the way up to 308. My body wasn't really built to carry that. So I shifted my focus in high school to wrestling, and I became a wrestler, and that was my gig. That was what my passion was. I found some really good coaches who, as you know, during that time in your life, you're kind of pushing back from your own parents at home. You're trying to establish your own identity. And I found some really excellent coaches to mentor me in high school wrestling. And that became really where I think all the foundation for my future success happened. I had some real epiphany moments in my high school wrestling career that led me to all of my later successes.
What weight were you wrestling at? Because I know there's these different divisions as you
Yes.
go up, right? So that's one. And the second, like, what were those moments that, really helped to shape your future?
Okay, so my freshman year I wrestled 135. My sophomore year I wrestled 145. My junior and senior year I wrestled 171 pounds both. And there were a couple of really big moments in there. One, we used to have this mantra, and you can look it up online, but there's this poem. It's by an anonymous author, and it's called "It's All a State of Mind." And we used to carry this card in our wallet, every one of us, and we get in this dog pile. Before a meet, after practice, we'd all get in this big sweaty dog pile. You can imagine how breathy it was in there. And we get in there and we'd all recite this whole poem, 3 verses of this poem. And we'd go through it. It's all a state of mind. If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but think you can, it's almost a cinch you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out in the world you'll find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all a state of mind. And then it goes on for 2 more verses. I can give it to you if you'd like, but the moral of the story is you're only as good as your mind will allow you to be. So that was a real big thing. And it just became my mantra over and over again. After tough losses, that would be my thing. I'm going to get over this. And I really had this goal after my freshman year of winning the state championship, because in Indianapolis, the state championship used to be where the Pacers played, and it still is, but it's switched arenas now. And they would put a spotlight on a single mat in the middle of what was Market Square Arena. And I think it seated 18,000 at the time. And there would be 15,000 wrestling fans from all over Indiana. And I really wanted to be in the spotlight and run out of the tunnel and have them introduce me and all of my accolades. And I ended up getting to do that my senior year, but it wasn't before a 19-20 sophomore year wrestling season where I was just awful. And then I hit a growth spurt. I hit puberty going into my junior year, made it to the state tournament, got knocked out, and then I made it to the finals, and I ended up losing in the state finals my senior year. So I just was 1 win short of achieving my ultimate goal. But I'm really thankful for that. And that was one of those moments that I look back on and I say, that loss set me up for all of my future successes. That loss kept that hunger inside of me of not quite achieving my goal, not quite getting to where I wanted to. And that for me has kind of been the theme of my life, is taking losses where I was nearly where I wanted to be and using those to drive me further and to keep that fire stoked inside of finding another passion, finding maybe a little other way to find success. And I think that's kind of set me up that, one, wrestling is a sport where the harder you work, the better in shape you are, the more time you put in, you're going to see results. It's you against another man. Is your will tougher than his? And then taking those little losses along the way and realizing that losses are, in fact, the greatest thing that can happen to you. You don't learn a lot from winning other than how good does this feel and I'd like to do it again. You learn a lot about yourself and about your craft through losing.
Yeah, that's so well said. You're talking about this in context of high school. I didn't figure that out until I got to the University of Washington, and a lot of people would look at me later and go, "Oh, you're so lucky," and they had no idea the hell I went through. My first 3 years, really, I redshirted 1 year, so I was there 5 years to get where I got, and it was through all that hard work and a high probability of probably not playing, and the guidance of some inspirational leaders. Our head coach, Don James, turned out to be a Hall of Fame coach. Who would have known at the time when I first went there? So, his whole pyramid of success. But, it really taught me how to be. And there was lots of places I had the opportunity to go, like Cal and other Oregon schools in Arizona, where I could have played early on as a freshman, and it would have been the worst thing in the world for me to do. And, at the time when you're a freshman, you're not thinking about it, or a high school senior, you're not thinking about it in that context. But, your whole point about adversity really made you grow in the right way to get where you were and are today in terms of really understanding how to work for things and really focus on how to get there with your mental capacity. People don't understand. They ask me all the time, oh, just tell me about how, you make it to the NFL or college. And I go, you don't understand. If you want to play at the highest levels, it's your mental, physical, spiritual. Those three things have to come together for all that to work in the right way.
Yeah, there's a baseline of talent, and then what are you going to do with that talent? Once you meet the minimum requirements to get into whatever institution you're trying to get into, that gives you the baseline of success. And then where are you going to take that? Where are you going to take that baseline? Are you going to grow from there? Are you going to achieve your maximum potential? Or are you going to be somebody who never achieves their potential? And in the sporting world, a guy with a lot of potential who never achieves it, that's one of the greatest insults you could throw out. He was an underachiever. That to me is one of the most criminal things that an athlete could be, because what does it say about him is that he didn't work. He didn't work at his craft. He didn't work at himself. And like you said, didn't work on his spiritual side. And I'm not saying it's got to be a religious aspect, but there's got to be something in there that fuels your why, that makes you think, why am I doing this? Why am I waking up early? Why am I staying up late? Why am I putting all these additional hours in to study? Why am I here? What am I doing this for?
You're exactly right. And everybody's got to find that. I mean, I truly believe that if you are purposeful in the way you go about life, you can achieve anything that you want to be. And it's not necessarily in a monetary fashion, but
right.
I climb mountains because I love it. Nobody pays me. It costs me money to go do that.
Yeah.
So, maybe that will change.
Drive.
That's the driver.
Drive. That's what you feel compelled when you wake up in the morning to start walking and to get moving and to get up a mountain and to stand on top of something and then to get back down and then to do it all over again because it's just in you. It's
in me. And this last one, I got off Denali up in Alaska, and that's a mother of a mountain. That's Everest type stuff. And we didn't make it. We didn't make it not because I didn't want to, but because it was minus 60 degrees. And so I went through a lot of hell to get even into position to summit, and we just were pushed down. And, those are those things. So, the guy that is just in it for the quick, glory quits. And the guy that, is in it for, again, going back to that why you're there, why you're purposeful and that passion, you just keep going. So you go through this, you have a great breakthrough with these coaches. You go to the state championship. You do lose in the finals, but there's great lessons learned out of that. And now you decide to go to Purdue, but you're not going to pursue wrestling. And certainly you're not playing football because you weren't playing football.
Right. I go to Purdue and I end up joining the ROTC program there. I end up joining the Navy ROTC program. I switched to the Marine Corps ROTC program, which is all under the same umbrella, the Department of the Navy. And I end up getting on scholarship that way because for me, I modeled after my dad's cousin. So it was my second cousin, who I thought at the time was the most successful person in our family. Everybody really revered my cousin Joe, who was a pilot for the Air Force. And he flew F-16s, and everybody just raved about my cousin Joe. And I said, well, that guy's a success. I want to go fly for the Navy. And then I switched to want to be a Marine. And then it ended up that I was colorblind and I couldn't qualify to be a Department of the Defense pilot.
By the way, that might have been a blessing for you.
It was so fantastic. It worked out really well for me because I don't think I would have been allowed to be sidetracked if that weren't the case. So I had a friend who was also in the ROTC program. His name was Frank Avino. And Frank was this big, chunky Italian kid who was in the Navy program, Chicago guy. And he came to me one day and he's like, Nick, in the paper, it was the Purdue Exponent. It was our school's newspaper. And in the classified ads, because this was before cell phones, in the classified ads, Purdue football took out a little ad for walk-on tryouts. And this was during the Drew Brees days. Purdue went to the Rose Bowl in 2001 in January there.
I was actually sitting in the Rose Bowl because they played Washington.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Yeah, and so
Washington beat Purdue.
Yeah, and so a good buddy of mine is Marcus Tuiasosopo, who was the other quarterback, and Marcus then went on to coach with Jim Mora at UCLA. He's now at Cal. but has become a great friend. So I was there watching, this shootout go down. It was great.
Yeah, 34-24, I believe Washington beat Purdue then.
And Marcus was the MVP.
Yes, he was. He had a heck of a game.
Yep.
And so I'm watching that season at Purdue, and I'm up in the stands at every game. My high school didn't have a big-time football program. I didn't really know what it was all about. Purdue was rabid about the team at that period. Watching Drew Brees, going to the Rose Bowl for the first time since 1967. Students were tearing down goalposts and crashing the field, and it was so much burning couches in the streets. It was a ton of fun, Mark. And I was in the crowd. I was giving my best effort. I went out to the Rose Bowl to go cheer the team on, but I didn't want to be the one cheering for other people. I wanted to be in the cut. I wanted to be the one getting cheered for. And at worst, I wanted a better seat. I wanted to be on the sidelines, and I thought maybe I could sneak my way onto the special teams or something like that. And when my buddy presented me with this walk-on tryout idea, I said, yeah, sure. And after the Rose Bowl, there was probably 110, 120 guys there that all tried out. 5 of us made it. Only 2 of us made it through spring ball that year. And the other guy who made it, his name was Jimmy Gaidos. And Jimmy was a real slight wide receiver, and they'd put him back on kickoff return and punt return. And as you know, some of these practice squad guys, they just let him get murdered.
They get lit up. Yeah, that's not fun.
He broke both of his collarbones. He didn't last very long, but God, it really worked out for me. 3 years of football, and then drafted in the 3rd round to the Chargers with the 66 pick.
That's awesome. You and I are cut from the similar cloth from this standpoint. I look at people who either they're doers, or what their skill is reporting on it, right? So in terms of being in the media and whatnot, and like you, I've just preferred to be out. I'm not there to create news, but I want to be the guy climbing the mountain, not reporting on the mountain.
Yes.
It's just fascinating to me because you kind of like bounced over a key component. I mean, it took me, I was coming out of high school. I was an All-American. I was recruited all over. And you're coming out of high school, you're not recruited because you didn't play, and you didn't play. So now, your skills you have to catch up, right, with everybody else.
Yes.
And to be able to close that gap in such a short period of time, to me, is it's remarkable, and it's a credit to you. And, obviously you must have been growing so that 5'2", 125-pound guy that was way back when, in 8th grade, and thinking about how you're going to, what's your next move, and now I'm going to go into wrestling, because you are what? Yeah, I'm 6'3". You're like 6'4", 6'5" now?
Yeah, well, I grew after my NFL days were done. I lost a bunch of weight, and I ended up growing a little bit over an inch. So 6'5", 225 now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so what happened after high school, I went to college, and I was probably 6'2", 195 pounds.
That's me.
I wrestled.
Me.
That's you right there. I wrestled my senior year at 171. I had to cut a bunch of weight to get down there, but I think my natural resting spot was 195. So I showed up, ROTC. I could run 5 to 8 miles pretty easily. I could do all the calisthenics and the pull-ups and the sit-ups. That was kind of the build that let me do that job. And I started eating more. I started training, and going into my sophomore year, I ended up weighing 230 pounds, which is where I walked onto the football team at. And so I walk onto the team, and they put me with the linebackers for 6 a.m. workouts in the spring. And it didn't matter that I was 230. I was not as fast as the other 230 pounders. I was as fast as an offensive lineman being 230 pounds. So I do spring ball. I show up at spring ball, and the linebacker coach says, "Who told you were a linebacker?" And I said, "I don't know, coach. They just put me there for 6 a.m. And he goes, "We're going to take you." And he walked me down the hallway to the next meeting room. And I thought, okay, well, I'll stop at the defensive ends. Well, we passed the defensive ends, and we went to the defensive tackles. And so I was now in a room with a bunch of 300-pounders and trying to figure out, why is the 230-pounder in here with these 310-pound men? And they said, "You better start eating." So I asked one of the guys, I said, "What do I got to do to put some weight on?" And it ended up being Matt Mitrione, who, I don't know if you follow fighting at all. Matt Mitrione just beat Fedor Emelianenko in a Bellator contest. So I asked Matt, I said, "What do you do, Matt? How'd you get so big?" And he goes, well, you lift really hard and then you eat 2 Jimmy John's gargantuan subs a day. And so I did that. I followed that recommendation to a T. I would put down 2 pounds of ground beef a day. I would set my alarm clock at 2:30 in the morning, wake up, have a 700 calorie EAS Myoplex shake, and I would smash whatever food I could find my hands on. And it was, I put on 45 pounds in about 5 months.
You know what, dude? That just sounds gross to me. Okay.
Oh, Mark, it was awful.
That's just like gorge eating, right?
It was awful. It was just as bad as calorie restriction was force feeding. I ended up getting an ulcer because of the stress of 6 a.m. workout, yell at me regularly, who scared the bejesus out of me when I was a kid. And having all of that ground beef caused a bacterial deal where I got ulcers and I threw everything up for months. So that was part of the deal. So I ended up being a defensive tackle for an entire season. Then going into my 4th year at Purdue, they moved me to guard.
Yep.
And then when we played in the bowl game, we ended up playing University of Washington. I don't know if you remember when Tank Johnson was there. We played in the Sun Bowl. My center, the game before the last game of the regular season, he tore his ACL. And they asked me to move over from left guard to center. And I said, sure, I'll give it a try. I don't really know anything. But it took 2 weeks, figured out all the calls, figured out how to snap it, had a really good game against the University of Washington in the bowl game, and ended up that I just knew I was right at home, that I had found my next career kind of in the story.
Yeah, I think that's where preparation meets opportunity, right? So you're there, you're eating like a horse, and you're lifting, you're doing all the things that these guys set forth. You're following your coach's recommendations on what you need to do, and then you then are adaptable to the game, and you learn the plays. You probably, knowing you just submerge yourself into the playbook. You learn what you need to learn. And then when the opportunity came up because of an injury, you went in, and the rest is history, so to speak.
Exactly. That's kind of what it is, Mark. It's not even just doing what's recommended. It's doing more than what's recommended. It's the old adage, eat, sleep, drink, football. That's what it is. And if you're sitting at your house, which I used to do when I was playing football and doing pass reps in the house, my body would think, because I'm putting myself in the context of blocking a Von Miller or a Vince Wilfork or a Ted Washington back in the day, that my body thought that it was actually getting those reps. So trying to find ways to accelerate my learning curve. That, for me, that's kind of been the difference between me and somebody else who may not have been able to capture those moments of opportunity where you talked about the preparation meets the opportunity. For me, that's kind of the difference, is going above and beyond on the work and kind of being just absolutely psychotic about the preparation and taking the little minute details of the game and trying to use those over and over and over again. And it's just eat, sleep, breathe, whatever you're doing, and you can accelerate your learning curve in a hurry.
Well, I think also part of your DNA, though, from what I learned, when you and I spent a week and a half in Africa, was number one, you're a high IQ guy. And the second part of that, and the more important part of that, is that you have a thirst for knowledge. And that thirst is just, you're always trying to what's new and how can I learn and how can I grow and be different, and that just, if you're not growing, you're dying, as I like to say. And certainly you're growing, and you like to read a lot of books, and you're pretty prolific in the amount of content that you read. So it's great. I mean, that's the way you elevate yourself.
Yeah, it's that search. You're right. There is that search for more. Could I be a better human? Could I be a better dad? Could I be a better performer broadcasting now? Could I be a better leader in the locker room when I was in there? For me, there was always something missing as to why I had not yet won a championship or why I had not yet achieved all of my full potential. And I still look at it that way. It's like, what more could I be doing? What more could I learn that I don't know? There's a part of my brain that I could unlock that could then unlock. It's endless, the amount of information out there that you could fuel yourself with, that I think could continue to become a better human, become a better man. And you're right. It's all about that thirst.
Well, certainly you hit your peak. You had an 11-year NFL career, which was amazing, considering the average is like 2.1 or something.
Yeah.
But you did go to the Pro Bowl in 2006, and so that must have certainly been a highlight. But when you look back on your NFL career, without going through all the different players and the games and maybe some injuries and things, but what do you look back and you walk away and you say, you know what, the defining moment for me and the epitome for playing in the NFL was this?
Okay, probably a couple of things. One, my injuries were the most significant portion of my career, not because of the way I feel now, but because of what they did for me at the time. They were very humbling, and they forced me to realize that I am mortal. I am going to die, that this is all going to end. And when I talk to kids who are playing football now, I try to let them know that you're very fortunate to be playing while you're playing, but this is all going to come to an end. And I think those injuries let me know that I'm just a cog in this wheel, that I'll hold it down. It'll be my position for some time. But the minute I'm done, the team, the league, it all moves on. They aren't going to have a Memorial Nick Hardwick Day to celebrate you. So do your job the best you can. Be proud of your accomplishments by yourself, but realize that you are mortal and be humbled. Be humbled by the whole situation, that you can be thankful that you've been blessed with the baseline talent. You've been blessed financially. Take care of it. It's a really good responsibility. And then when I think about my career, the two moments, and these are, it's funny that I learned from the negatives, just like wrestling. I learned from my losses. I learned from the injuries, the time spent on the couch, and I also learned from times. The ones that I really take away from are the times where I was the GOAT, and not the greatest of all time GOAT. I'm talking about the scapegoat, the guy who totally had the blunder at the end of the game, that the media comes right to your locker room and goes, Nick, what happened on that snap when you were trying to close out the game in Kansas City in 2010 on Monday Night Football, when all you guys had to do was take a knee and kick a field goal, and you and Philip could not get the quarterback center exchange right? What happened there? That moment caused so much reflection. It caused so much introspection, and being able to deal with the loss, being able to deal with being that guy in the locker room who let everybody else down, who we all put ourselves in position to be able to win, and I dropped the ball. Literally, I dropped the ball. We didn't get the quarterback center exchange. We ended up losing it in overtime. It was a national game. That kind of introspection, that real deep loss where you go, I don't know why I do this to myself. I don't understand why I torture myself this way, but I can still move on. I can still use that moment. And I remember having so many text conversations with Philip after that of, how are we going to go on? How are we going to move past this? I don't even know if I can show my face in the locker room anymore. And us helping one another get over that moment to say, it doesn't make me a different person. It doesn't mean that I'm lesser of a human because I had a mistake in a football game. Everybody makes mistakes. What are you going to do with that mistake? Are you going to become a better leader? I ended up going to see a sports psychologist after that in an attempt to get mentally tougher. So I use that really bad moment, and others like that. I can think of 2 or 3 throughout my career that were terribly devastating at the time, but I used those moments to become not only a better football player, but really just a better man.
By the way, were you on the same team with Ryan Leaf?
I never was, no.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, he's gone through some tough times. He was with the Chargers, of course, number 2 pick behind Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning, yeah.
Yep, I did a workout with him up at Jay Glazer's spot up in L.A. and with Nate, right? And that's where I met him, and he really seems to have turned his life around, and in a positive way going forward. So it's fun to see.
I've gotten to know Ryan. We've done several interviews and we're kind of buddies now, and I've gotten to know him, and it is a remarkable story of what you can do when you work on yourself. Yeah, you're so right with that. One of the things that you appear to have done, I didn't do a great job of this. I later would figure it out, but I went through a couple of years of some painful moments coming out of the NFL.
but you now are the voice down in San Diego, right? And you do a morning show. So getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning or something crazy and doing the 6 to 10 or 6 to 9 show.
Yeah, we do 6 to 9, Sports Talk Radio, Extra 1360, Fox Sports San Diego. And then I'm also the color commentator for the now Los Angeles Chargers.
Where did you start, the transition period? So you played 11 years, right?
Yeah.
And was it like you're now 12, as we chronologically count, that you started working with sports radio, or did you start the internship before that, or how did you learn that?
I had kind of picked up some radio gigs while I was playing, and I became a guy who would speak, and I would appear on Monday morning after a game on some of the local sports shows or some of the local rock channels and kind of give them the recap of the game. And then when I retired, I asked about the field reporter position for the team, and I wanted to be just involved. I kind of wanted to work into the mix, and I always had my eye on becoming the color commentator for the team. Even probably 4 years leading up to my retirement, I had my eye on that position. And so I asked about the field reporter job, and it was available. And so that became a nice transition piece out of the game. It kept me involved in it and also put me on the path to start to get to where I ultimately wanted to be.
Yeah, which is where you are today, right?
Yes.
So you're doing this. I mean, it must be fun. I mean, when we talked down in Africa and down in Tanzania, you were telling me you get up at literally 4 o'clock in the morning every morning. You drive in, and the preparation of guests. I mean, how does that? So you guys only are on till 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and so is the rest of the day or segments of the day. You're trying to figure out the planogram of who's coming on, and then all the preparation about what kind of questions, or how does that work?
What I do is I wake up usually about 3:45, and I've been hitting the treadmill for about 15, 20 minutes before I go in, just to kind of get the mind going, start thinking in that direction, watch some highlights. But really the show work is done the day before. It's done the night before. After I put my kids down at about 7, I work till about 8:30, and we start laying out. And my co-host Judson Richards does a really nice job also kind of co-producing the show. And we get our segments laid out of talking points. And then I kind of go in and fill in with data that I would like to throw out there, how I would like to present the story. And then we're done with the show by 9 a.m., 9:30-ish usually. And then we just start brainstorming about who we'd like to have, what kind of topics are coming up, who would add some good sound to the segment. When you're interviewing guests, we kind of look at it like sound, like we want to throw it to somebody that either presents a new idea or has a new idea that we want to see and vet that out a little bit more. So it's all partly that. And then in football season, once the morning sports talk radio show is done, then it's all about going to get prepared for the weekend and laying out who the opponent is coming up and what the Chargers transactionally have done, how they're going to adjust. And you've got landmarks you've got to hit during a game, knowing where you're going to go, who's your key matchup, all that. So during season, it's more than just a morning show. It becomes a really rigorous schedule.
Yeah, no, I bet. One of the things that you show all the time, and we talked about this a little bit in Africa, is your diet. And you've got a pretty crazy diet, but to go from 295 down to, I think you said 225. And as we stood in the line at that hotel, and we both had, our little fruit and whatnot at our table, and I'm looking at you, you're just kind of a big version of me, right? And
right.
Remember that conversation. So
yeah.
So how did you do that? I mean, so you're this massive weight. Obviously, you're not gorging in hoarding food, like you were back in your college days. But the fruits and vegetables. I mean, how did that all work? What's your plan?
Okay, so I've gone through so many different iterations of diets. I've done paleo, I've done vegan, I've done vegetarian, I've done high protein. Right now I'm in a phase that's called ketogenic. So real high fats, high healthy fats, moderate protein. I try to keep it under about 60 to 70 grams a day, and then as low a carbs as I can possibly have. High dietary fiber, but low net carbs. I try to keep my net carbs under about 20 to 30. But I lost 85 pounds in 4 months after I decided I was going to retire. 85 pounds. And it doesn't matter what diet you subscribe to, you can lose weight if your calories in are less than your calories out. That's the overarching theme.
It's a math equation, right?
It's in fact a law of thermodynamics.
Yep.
that if you consume less calories than you're burning, you will lose weight. I had a blog post up on my website, nickhardwick.com, if anybody's interested, that yesterday it's kind of come to the point where when you talk to people, you hear them making excuses for why they can't lose weight. I can't lose weight because this happened. I can't lose weight. My body's just different. I'm big boned. I'm this. And then the thing that came to me was people don't starve to death that are fat. You've got fuel on your body to be able to burn. Stop making excuses and start measuring your food. If you're not losing the weight you want to lose, then you need to realize what calorically you're consuming. And so that kind of is the overarching theme, is calories in, calories out all day. And then everything else within that umbrella is going to help accelerate some of that weight loss.
Yep. Well, certainly you have to be motivated, right? And it's just not about, the things that you put in front of your face. And I talk to I've got 2 daughters, and I talk to them all the time about this, which is life is about moderation.
Yeah.
Last night I took my daughter out for an ice cream cone, and I don't have ice cream every day, but I probably had an ice cream cone a month ago, right? In between that, I've been on Denali. I usually train early in the morning, and then I train at night doing something, right? So I do 2-a-days, and that's just what I feel I need to do to maintain. But I don't want to go through life starving myself on things that are considered quote unquote treats, right? But it's being aware of the things that you are putting in your body. So once in a while that you can have those things that, you just, a quick little pop. And I got to say, by the way, after I had my ice cream cone, I got a shooting headache because I just don't have that much sugar. So
your body's like, what is going on here?
Oh my God. Come climbing with me on these extreme, all you're having is hash browns or a Snickers bar or something. I mean, it's insane. You just can't, because you're carrying all the food on your back.
I would love to do Denali with you at some point. Mark, when we got back from Tanzania, I had a couple of things that really hit me once we got home. And one of them, a big one that I kind of relayed in terms of diet, was you got to turn your wants into needs. Your wants have to become needs. If you want to lose weight, if you want to be successful, mentally you can find a way to turn that want into a need. I need to lose weight. Why do I need to lose weight? I need to lose weight so I can play with my kids, so my joints aren't deteriorating rapidly, so I don't have to have hip and knee replacements, so I can climb a mountain if I choose to. I have to turn my wants into needs, because we all want things that we're never going to get. I want to have a private jet. I'm probably never going to get it. I got to turn my wants, though, into needs. And the other thing that really hit me when we got back, and especially after climbing with Kirsty, Ivan, and Pete, was
which are all well, 2 of them are amputees and the other one's blind. They're war veterans.
Yes.
Yep.
And the thing I took from them and climbing Kilimanjaro with them was, you don't have to do anything. You get to do everything. And that to me was a real paradigm shift in my outlook. I don't have to go to work. I saved all my money in the NFL. I don't have to do that if I don't want to. I get to. I get to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I get to wake up in the morning and get up before everybody else. I get to be on air. I get to do this podcast with you. I get to go to tennis school and pick up my kids. And
it's a privilege.
Life's a privilege.
Absolutely.
Life's a privilege. And you get that by looking at Tanzanians who have to walk 5 miles to get water and walk 5 miles back with a bucket on their head. And they're smiling. Somehow they're still smiling. And you look at Ivan Castro, who has no vision because he got in an accident in war and lost his vision. And he gets to climb Mount Kilimanjaro still. And he gets to wake up with exuberance. The guy wakes up that way every single day. And I think it's just a mental shift that I had when I got back from there that has taken away any of the clouds that kind of float above your head. And you get that woe is me, I'm overworked, underpaid type mentality. And you go, to hell with that. I get to do this. I get to live my life. I get to have a beautiful wife and 2 boys. And coach Little League. I get to do all this stuff. It's amazing.
It's interesting what you said. There's two notes on that. Number one is you talked about the want and the need. I've always talked about it slightly different and about the difference between willing and want. We're saying the same thing, but everybody wants to become a millionaire and fly the private jet and play in the NFL, but are you willing to do what it takes? And I think that really ties into, now you get to do these things, but you got to put yourself in that position. And the second part of that is you were just talking about Ivan. And so for those people who don't know, Ivan was another special forces guy that had shrapnel shatter his eyesight. And so he was climbing Kilimanjaro blind with the group that Nick and I were with. And he actually was in my vehicle, when we were driving through the Serengeti. And then we've got giraffes, as you remember, you were in the car in front of us. They're flying by the truck, and we've got zebras, and we're going, oh my God, there's the zebras. Look. And he was in our car just like, tell me what that's like. But rather than get down about it, about the circumstances that he was dealt with, he had nothing but joy and happiness for us, that we could see it. And, there was a time in his life when he could see, and so he could imagine what that might look like. But, it's just where your focus goes, your energy always follows. And so if your mindset is something that is like, I can't do it, life sucks, or I've got a shitty job or whatever, that's the way that you're going to view the world. So credit to you, that you've taken on that approach and you've been very successful. But I go back to, you were willing to do what it took to put yourself in a position to have the kind of lifestyle you are today, right? Last thing I want to talk about quickly is Water Boys, and that's the organization that Chris Long, our friend, he now plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, that he started, I think, 3 years ago. And he saw what I saw when I went down there 5 years ago, which was a lot of poverty and a lot of women walking around with buckets on their head, walking miles to go get water, and all the different things that with the disease and young gals being raped and, just awful stuff, right? And so he set out to do something. And I wanted to compliment you in that, Jim and I were able to raise, a substantial amount of money, but, you were right there too, and you could see the need. And so you used your platform to actually go out and create awareness and bring money and, fulfill your goal. And it was great. It was really fun to see that.
Yeah, wasn't that nice? That was just so nice, being in those villages, being around those boarding schools where the kids previously had to leave school or couldn't show up if the girls were on their menstrual cycle, and bringing a little bit of normalcy to their life. To see the people in that second community that we went into, and the water tapped for the first time, and that big ceremony that went about them, people worshiping water, something that we go to the sink and we stand there and we let the water run for 3 minutes so it can get hot enough to be able to make our tea or coffee or whatever the heck we want to make. To be able to go to another country and see that people are tapping water for the first time in their adult lives, it's remarkable, and it's life-changing for them, but also for me to have witnessed the kind of life that they've had. It was just an unbelievable experience.
Well, water's life for them down there. And the word that, you're essentially saying was the gratefulness.
Yes, right? That's it.
So grateful that we just built a well, and they just turn a knob now and water comes flowing out, right? And
yeah,
it's crazy, but it's amazing. And and you said this before, but it puts life in a certain perspective. And once you do that, then you're able then to appreciate things in a much different tone.
It makes us more grateful. It makes us be able to appreciate our stuff more. And I tell you, I don't know if you experience this, and I bet you do every time you come back from a mountain or a big trip overseas, is I don't want to say I felt guilty, but I just felt like coming back here and all the stuff we have is just so unnecessary when you go and life is so simple. And it's so simple on the mountain, isn't it? You just put one foot in front of another and you get to the top and you eat when you need to. But you got this real mental clarity. And then you come back and the real world just kind of hits you in the face. And there's so much other stuff and noise going on that you become distracted and a little confused. And it took me a good 2 weeks from coming back from Africa and seeing how those folks live to kind of settle down back into the life that we have, or I guess get back on the ride would probably be a more fitting analogy to say, all right, here we go, full speed again, back into not only just regular life, but even involved in the media where this is such a big part of it.
I call it the re-entry, right? Like you're coming in from outer space or something, and probably something you didn't see me do, but because we would retreat to our tents. But when I go and I climb, the period of time when you're resting and kind of prepping up for the next day, I spend a lot of time journal writing. Because you're not connected in a wired world, and phones don't work, and you don't have your laptop. It just, things get silent, and you don't have all this distraction. And so for me, it brings a lot of clarity on thoughts and different experiences that I've had on the mountain, and like what I want to accomplish when I get back. So it's a great quiet time to be in nature to really get clear on your life and things that are going on.
Oh, very cool. I'm going to have to take that advice next time I do it.
Well, hopefully we can be on the team again, Team Chris Long again, Team Waterboys, and go back down and do it. So the last thing that we'll hit you with is you did ultimately, it sounds like you have fulfilled your dream, which I know you were a bit critical about the Charger move, understandably, from San Diego to LA, now the LA Chargers. But despite all that, you were going to be the color guy or be involved in some capacity with the Chargers. And so that means you're going to be making some road trips to LA, I assume.
I'll be in your neighborhood.
You're welcome to stay with Jim or I anytime. But so tell me about that really quick, how that came about. Because I know that you were critical on air about how that played out.
Yeah, so the news broke while I was doing the radio show in the morning, and I was critical immediately. I just didn't appreciate the way it was handled, that there wasn't a whole lot of commentary towards the city of San Diego. And I understand now, I still, in hindsight, would have preferred they address the city of San Diego and thank them for their time, for their money, for building the franchise up to where it is. I understand now why they did the way they did, that they feel like if they were going to go to a huge market, number 2 media market in all of the country in LA, that they had to be fully committed, and it was going to look bad either way. That no matter what they did, no matter what they said, that people were going to be very mad. It was a quite emotional time, as I experienced. And over months, I went through a bunch of different iterations of emotions. So I immediately was angry. And I think that anger stemmed from fear of my future, fear of loss, fear of the unknown. And that kind of led to a little bit of confusion, which led to some football. I was agnostic about football. I became to the point where I was like, I've seen the business side of football. I don't like it. I don't want to participate in the NFL. But my radio show took me to Houston to the Super Bowl. And I got to be around football people again. And Mark, when you're around your family, that you can just be yourself. That when I got back around all these football people, all the legends of the game, football fans who were the most ardent football fans, that I just felt at home again. So my heart started to warm to football again. Then the draft came. And when the draft came, I was trying to cheer for other teams. I feeling my way into the game again. And I realized I only care about one team, and it's the Chargers, and I don't really care what city they're in. And then I realized we're covering the team. We're in San Diego. We run a show in Southern California. We are still going to cover the Chargers. And if I'm going to cover the Chargers, by God, I'm going to be the guy. I want to be in the booth. It's kind of the same thing as when I was a student at Purdue watching in the stands. I didn't want to be the one cheering for the guys. I wanted to be in the cut. And this is as close as I could be to being in the cut, is being the color commentator for the team and being one of the voices of the Chargers. And I realized I still love the NFL. I still love the Chargers. And now, you know what? I just got to work a little bit harder to be with my team.
Well, I'm from Seattle, so I went through something similar. I mean, I didn't play in the NBA, of course, but our Sonics went to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just rips out the hearts of everybody, and it's so emotional and such a fabric, of the community and whatnot. So it's, it's very easy and understandable. I don't think there's any good way to do it. But the other thing I've learned in my life is that change happens, right? And
yes.
You have to be adaptable to that change, or it's going to be tough because things happen, and they make certain decisions based on certain decisions. So
that are out of our control.
So you either got to go with it and make your decisions based on that, or flow with it and get back on board. And sounds like you did, and you did the right thing. At the end of the day, you don't really win, I don't think, if you are in a position where you're at odds with the team. And football is such a big part of your life that it would be a shame if you weren't involved in some way.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yep.
And I feel the exact same way. I feel complete now that I'm back with the team. And I know I pissed a lot of people off by taking the team back, but you can't help your emotions and you can't help what you care about. And I deeply care about them. I, in fact, broke my neck for the team in my 11 years. I was captain of the team for 5 years. It's impossible for me to not care.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So this has been a joy, an absolute treat. And again, one of the things that I tried to impart on the different listeners is this whole notion about finding your summit. And certainly you have had yours. I mean, I think it's easy to look at you and say, hey, that guy's had it all. But, you had to work for every single thing you've ever gotten. And I've seen you in action, climbing with you down in Africa, down in Tanzania on Kilimanjaro. That was a joy too. And if people want to find you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram. @Hardwinna is my handle. HARDWINA. I got a website, nickhardwick.com. We put up a lot of healthy food, healthy living posts there. And Facebook, Nick Hardwick.
Awesome. And the last thing is, if you would send me that poem that you recited, I mean, that's powerful and that's awesome. And I want to put that on the front page of iTunes. So on that note, Nick, it's awesome. I look forward to seeing you up here in LA for the new LA Chargers, and look forward to hopefully climbing with you in the future.
Hey, thanks for the time, Mark. I'll climb with you soon.
Thank you so much for listening to the Find Your Summit podcast. We are so glad to have you along for this journey. And if you enjoyed the show, please tell a friend, share it on iTunes, spread it to the planet. We're looking to broadcast this to every person that is out there because, as you know, everybody has their own summit that they're going after. If you're looking to follow my journey, you can find that through my social links on markpattisonnfl.com. That's M-A-R-K, Pattison, P-A-T-T-I-S-O-N, NFL.com. So, until the next podcast, just remember, clear eyes, full hearts. It takes a little more to make a champion, so make it happen. Thank you. Bye.